When you first open SolidWorks, you should see this screen or something similar. If this is your first time using SolidWorks, you may have to close several dialog boxes and menus. Once you have gotten to this screen, you want to create a new part file. You can do this by clicking up on the top of the screen, File, New, Part. You can also do Control-N and then select Part. Once you get to this screen, you want to save your part so you can come back and edit it later. You can save by going to File, Save, or Control-S. Name your part something descriptive. I will name mine Cube, and select where you want your file to be saved. Once you have saved your part, you should set what system of units you want to use. SolidWorks defaults to using millimeter gram second. I will be using inch pound second. Go to the bottom right corner, click the MMGS button, and select which system of units you want to use. Once you have chosen your system of units, you can set an appearance for your part. This is purely cosmetic and does not affect the modeling, but I think it makes it easier to look at. You set an appearance by clicking on the beach ball icon on the far right side of the screen. You will open this Appearances tab and select what you want your model to look like. Because this model will be made out of wood, I like to go to Organic, Wood, and then select some type of wood. It doesn't matter what you pick, but I like beech, and then select one of these options. Double-click on the option you want, and then click in the center of the screen to close that menu. You are now ready to start creating your model. In SolidWorks, you create a three-dimensional object by first drawing a two-dimensional outline and then extending that drawing to make a three-dimensional object. A sketch always needs to be drawn on a surface. Because there aren't any surfaces yet in this empty model, you will need to go to the sidebar and select one of these planes. It doesn't matter which one. I will do the top plane. Right-click on the plane and click Sketch. You are now in sketch mode. If you click the Sketch tab on the top of the screen, you can see a large number of tools to choose from. You want to make a rectangle. This will become one side of your cube. You can create a rectangle by selecting the Rectangle tool on the top bar here, clicking anywhere in your drawing, moving the mouse, and clicking again. You can also open rectangles by holding down right-click on the mouse and dragging it down, and then releasing. You can see that my rectangle is blue right now. This means that its location and size is not fully defined, and I can move the pieces around to make the rectangle bigger or smaller. All sketches should be fully defined before you create a three-dimensional object from them. I'm now going to create a line and go from one corner of the rectangle to the other opposite corner. To exit a sketch tool, I can hit the Escape key. I will right-click on my diagonal line and select Construction Geometry. This tells SolidWorks that this piece is only used to help you dimension your sketch. Right-click on the middle line and select Midpoint. While holding the Control key, click on the point of origin marked by these two red arrows. You want to tell SolidWorks that these 2 points should be coincident, or right on top of each other. Once you've done that, hit the check mark to close the Properties tab. Because this is a cube, each side should be a square. You can tell SolidWorks to make this rectangle a square by dragging the mouse to the left to select two of the sides, and setting the two sides to be equal length in this left-hand box that pops up. You now need to tell SolidWorks what size this square should be. You can do this by going to Sketch, Smart Dimension, or by holding the right-click button and dragging the mouse up. Click on the line that you want to give a dimension, and you should get this little measurement tool. Click anywhere to place the measurement. You will now be given the option to set a length. I will set my side length to be 3 inches. So I type 3 inches and then hit enter. You can now see that my dimension is 3 inches and all the lines are black. My sketch is fully defined. I now want to save this sketch and exit to create a three-dimensional object. You can exit your sketch by going to the Sketch tab and hitting Exit Sketch, or you can use Control-B. Often a model will have one dimension that is used many times. For example, in this model, the thickness of the plywood will be referenced very frequently. For convenience, you can save the name of a dimension for a quick access later. You do this by clicking Tools on the top left and selecting Equations. Click in Global Variables and enter the name of your variable, in this case, plywood thickness. Click in Value and enter the thickness of your plywood. In my case, it is 0.116 inches. Click OK. You now want to extend your square into a third dimension to create a piece of wood. Click on Sketch 1 on the left-hand sidebar and select Features. Now select Extruded Boss Base. This now shows you a preview of what your extrusion will look like. You want to do your extrusion from the sketch plane, blind, and then set a distance. In my case, we want to extrude this by the thickness of the plywood. Because we already saved this as a saved dimension, I can just start typing plywood thickness and it appears here. I will now hit OK. You have now created the first side of your cube. You can look at this piece from different angles by holding down the scroll wheel on your mouse and dragging around to rotate the model. You can move the model from side to side by holding Control, holding down the scroll button on your mouse, and moving the mouse around. You can move the camera towards or away from your model by using the scroll wheel on the mouse. Now that you have the first side of the cube, you want to start creating the other 5 sides. I will now create another sketch for the next side of the cube. This time, because I have a surface defined in the model, I will right-click on one edge of this piece of wood and select Sketch. I will now open the Rectangle tool and click from one corner of the wood up into the distance. I will select 2 of the lines and set them equal. And now, instead of giving this bottom line a dimension, I can click on this corner, hold down Control, rotate the model, and click this face. I then set these points to be coincident. My square is now fully defined, and I can exit the sketch using Control-B. I will select this new sketch on the left-hand bar, and go to Extruded Boss Base again. Again, I will rotate my model for a better view, and I want to make sure that I am extruding into the piece of wood I already have. In this case, SolidWorks is choosing to extrude the new material away from the piece I already have. I can change this direction by clicking this toggle under Direction 1. Enter the plywood thickness again, and make sure you uncheck Merge Result. This step is very important. Now click the check button. You should now have 2 pieces of wood, and you should have 2 solid bodies. Finally, I will create a third side of the cube by clicking on one edge here, opening Sketch, opening my rectangle, clicking from one corner up into the distance, setting these 2 sides to be equal, selecting a corner of my sketch and a face of this piece of wood, and setting them to be coincident. My sketch is now fully defined, and I will exit using Control-B. I will select Sketch 3, go to Features, Extruded Boss Base, and again I will toggle the direction so I'm extruding into the pieces I already have. I will uncheck Merge Result and set my plywood thickness. You should now have 3 sides of your cube completed, and 3 solid bodies in the left-hand sidebar. To save time, you can create the remaining 3 sides of the cube by reusing the sketches you have already made. Expand Boss Extrude 1 and select Sketch 1. Go to Features, Extruded Boss Base. Now, instead of extruding from the sketch plane, I will select Surface Face Plane and select a face on the top of the model. You can see that my proposed extrusion has now moved to the top of the cube. Again, I will flip the direction to extrude into my material and uncheck Merge Result. I will now repeat this process with sketches 2 and 3. You should now have all 6 sides of the cube complete and 6 solid bodies. You will notice that the edges of the cubes overlap. This is normal. This will help you create tabs to glue the pieces of wood together in the future. You can verify this by going to the top bar, clicking Evaluate, and then Interference Detection. Click Calculate, and SolidWorks will show you all the regions in which the different pieces of wood are trying to occupy the same volume. This is obviously a problem, because in real life you can't have 2 pieces of wood in the same space. To correct this, you will cut tabs along the edge of each piece of wood so that they can be glued together. Here is an example of what that should look like. In this part, each piece of wood has been cut in a zigzag pattern so that it can be glued to the other pieces. To create these tabs, click on one edge of the cube, it doesn't matter which side, and select Sketch. Now open the Rectangle tool, and starting from one corner, draw a set of 3 rectangles going down the edge of the cube. While holding down the Control key, left-click and drag your mouse to highlight the vertical edges of your rectangles. Select Equal and check. Next, select this edge of the rectangle, which is undefined. And while holding down the Control key, select this face. Select Coincident and close that dialog box. Next, open your Measurement tool. You can click Smart Dimension, or again, do the mouse and right-click and drag up. Click on this line segment and place a dimension. In here, you want this cut to be the width of your plywood, so type equals plywood thickness, and then check. All your rectangles should now be fully defined along one edge of your cube. Next, draw a line. Go to Sketch, Line. Click on one top edge of the cube and draw a line down to the bottom edge. Select the line and click Vertical for construction. Right-click on one top edge of the cube and click Select Midpoint. While holding Control, select the line. Now click Coincident. The line should now be fully defined. Go to Sketch, Mirror Entities. Select your rectangles, and then click Mirror About and select your line. Click Check. Next, you will draw another horizontal line. Go to the left edge of the sketch and draw the line across to the right-hand edge. Highlight the line and select For Construction, Horizontal. Right-click on the left edge of the cube and select Midpoint. Next, while holding the Control key, click on the line. Select Coincident. This line should now be fully defined as well. On the top edge of the sketch, I am now going to draw another 3 rectangles, going from this corner across. Make sure that the edge of the rectangle is snapping to the top edge of the cube as you draw. While holding the Control key, I'm going to hold down the left mouse button and drag to the left to select the horizontal segments of each rectangle. I will set these to be equal. Next, I will select this line, and while holding the Control key, we'll select this face. I will set these two to be collinear. Next, you should add a measurement. You can click on this line and then the top line. Drag the measurement out and click to place it. And again, type equals plywood thickness. Finally, you will hold down the left mouse button and drag to the right to select the top row of rectangles. Go to Sketch, Mirror Entities, select Mirror About, and select the horizontal line. Click the checkbox. You should now have a result that looks like this. Everything should be fully defined, which you can check by looking at the text down here, and you should not have any errors. If this is the case, exit the sketch by using Ctrl-B. Click on the sketch and go to Features, Extruded Cut. An extruded cut is similar to an extruded boss base, except in this case you are removing material instead of adding it. Because there are multiple areas in your sketch, you will need to select which ones to cut. In this case, I will be cutting an alternate pattern around the edge. Click Selected Contours, and then click inside each of these little rectangles. Do not click the edge. The region should highlight before you click it. Make sure you get the small squares and the corners as well. So I will select the corner, skip the center, select the next corner, skip the center, and repeat this process all the way around the edge. If you do accidentally click an edge, you will see it show up in this box as a contour instead of a region. Select the contour and hit Delete. Then continue selecting the regions. Now that you have all the regions selected, go up to this box and click Up to Surface. Rotate the model and select the opposite edge of the cube. You will need to click this pink box before you can do this. Make sure that Thin feature is unchecked, and you should get a result that looks something like this. The yellow areas show material to be removed. In this case, you only want the pieces of wood on this face and this face of the cube to be cut. So you will scroll down here and uncheck Auto Select. Click in this green box and click on the 2 faces of the cube that you want to be cut. They should now appear in green. Click the checkbox. You should now see a few tabs starting to appear on the top of the cube. You can reuse that same sketch to continue cutting tabs. Click on Sketch again, Features, Extruded Cut. This time, in Selected Contours, I will be selecting the centers. This time, instead of cutting up to a surface, I'm going to cut blindly for a distance of plywood thickness. Down here, I'm going to uncheck Auto Select and select the 4 edges of the cube. You should have a result that looks like this. The green sides are the only pieces that will be affected by this operation, so you will be left with 4 tabs on the top piece. Click Check. You now have the tabs completed on the top side of the cube. Go back to Sketch 6, go to Extruded Cut, and repeat that process for the bottom side of the cube. Now 4 of the sides of the cube have the tabs cut. You can again go to Evaluate, Interference Detection, and click Calculate. There should still be some interference, but not as much as there was previously. These 2 sides of the cube now have tabs cut along their edges. Now it's time to do the same for the remaining 4 edges. I will select one of the pieces that is not fully cut, right-click on it and go to Sketch. In this case, these 2 sides already have tabs on them, so I'm only going to draw rectangles along this top edge. Again, I will draw a set of 3 rectangles. I will select the horizontal edges and set them all to be equal. I will now select this vertical line and this face, and I will attempt to set them to be collinear. You may get this error when you're sketching, where SolidWorks will inform you that the sketch is overdefined. This is typically caused by conflicting relations. In this case, I accidentally set this edge of the rectangle to be centered between the 2 edges of the cube. So when I try to say this piece now has to be at this side of the cube, that creates a conflict. If you run into this issue, delete the thing highlighted in red and click the checkbox. If you can immediately see what the issue is, you can try selecting the line and deleting the conflict. Oftentimes, however, it's easier simply to delete the rectangles by selecting them, hitting the delete key, and starting over. Again, I will select that line and attempt to select this face. I will hit collinear and hit the checkbox. Now, while holding the Control key, I will select the edges of the rectangles and set them to be equal. This time there wasn't a conflict. I will now open the measurement tool by holding down right-click on the mouse and dragging up. Click on one edge of the rectangle and create a measurement. Set this to be equal plywood thickness. Your 3 rectangles should now be fully defined. Now create a line and draw a horizontal line between the 2 edges of the cube. If your line goes over the edge of the cube, you can select the end of the line and while holding Control select this face and set them to be coincident. Next, select the line and check Horizontal for construction. Now select one edge of the cube, right-click it and hit Select Midpoint. Also click on the line while holding Control and select Coincident. The line should now be fully defined and horizontal across the center of your cube. Now, select the rectangles. Go to the Sketch tab and click Mirror Entities again. Click Mirror About and select your line. Your sketch should now be fully defined. Exit the sketch again by clicking Exit or Control-B. Click on your sketch on the left-hand side and go to Features, Extruded Cut. I will now select the middle section on the top and bottom, and I will cut these through to the other opposite surface. I will uncheck Auto Select here and select this face and this face, and then hit the checkbox. Next, I will go to Sketch 7 again and go to Features, Extruded Cut. This time I will select the 4 regions at the ends. I will now select Blind and enter the plywood thickness. Uncheck Auto Select and click on these 2 edges. Click on Check. Go to Sketch 7 one more time, Extruded Cut. Now do the same cut except from the other side of the cube. So change this to Surface Face Plane and select the far side of the cube. Make sure this is Blind, plywood thickness, and again, select the 4 regions on the ends. Make sure that you are cutting into the model. Again, this time it's cutting away from the model, so I will change the direction here. Uncheck Auto Select here, and click on these 2 edges. Click on Check. I will now run a interference detection. Ideally, you will have no interference at this point. However, sometimes you will get very small regions interfering with each other. As long as the numbers next to each interference are extremely small, this should not be a problem. If necessary, you can always sand down one edge of the wood a tiny bit. In my case, all of my numbers are less than 1/1000th of a cubic inch, and so I'm not worried about it. Your cube is now fully modeled. If you would like, you can add text to be engraved into the cube when you laser cut it. You can add text by right-clicking on a side and selecting Sketch. Go to Sketch, and then add a line across the cube. It doesn't really matter where the line is. Set the line to be for construction. Now go to Sketch, Text. Enter the text that you want. And then in this box labeled Curves, click on the line. This should place your text along the line. If it's upside down or mirrored, you can adjust the text using the options down here. Once you like how your text looks, you can confirm this selection. Don't worry if your text is not fully defined. It is difficult to fully define text, and unless the location of the text is particularly critical, leaving this sketch underdefined will not be an issue. You can now exit this sketch using Ctrl-B. Click on this sketch, go to Features, Extruded Cut, and Extruded Cut from the sketch plane, blind by 0.001 inches, or by some very small number. You should now see the words show up on the cube. You are now ready to turn your model into a laser cutting file. To do this, I will go to File, New, Drawing, or I could do Ctrl-N and then select Drawing. You should now get this option. You should select a large paper format such as A0 or A1. Click OK. Close any dialog boxes that might appear. You should see a large drawing template with a border around it. Go to Sheet Format, Edit Sheet Format. Right-click on the border and select Delete, and then confirm the delete. This should leave you with a completely blank sheet. Now go to Drawing, Model View, and you should see your cube file right here. If you don't see the file appear, you may need to browse for it. Double-click on Cube, and go to Select Bodies. Click on one part of the cube, and confirm your selection. Now, on the menu on the left, scroll down and make sure you set the scale to be 1:1. This is very important. Make sure that you have Preview selected, and then hover the mouse over the drawing area. You will see one view of the cube. In this case, we're seeing the part edge on, which we don't want. So I will select a different option from this list. This is good, but I'm not seeing the text, so I will select the other side. I now see a drawing of one side of the cube. I will click to place it on the drawing area. Once you place a drawing, SolidWorks will attempt to generate another angle of this same part. In this case, we do not want this. Hit Escape. Now, repeat this process by going to Drawing, Model View, double-click Cube, select Bodies, and select a new part. Again, make sure you have Scale set to be 1:1. SolidWorks will default to 1:2. Make sure Preview is checked, and then choose an option here which makes you see the full outline of the piece. In this case, the two sides of the cube are identical, so instead of entering the last two sides of the cube, I'm simply going to select these two views and copy-paste them using Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. I will move them around so they're not overlapping with other views. The reason that you can't simply copy-paste all three views is that this side has the text on it and the reverse side does not. Once you have all the pieces of the cube laid out on your drawing file, you are ready to go on to the next step. You should now save this drawing file so you can edit it later if need be. Again, do Ctrl-S, enter a name for the file. I will name mine Cube Outlines, and hit Save. Now go to File, Save As, and save this as a DXF file. You will likely get this warning message. This is okay. Now, open Inkscape. Go to File, Open, and open your DXF file. Make sure you set manual scale and set the scale factor to 1.0. SolidWorks adds a little bit of text into each image. You want to make sure you remove this text, otherwise it will be cut by the laser cutter. Select it and hit delete. Any lines colored in red will be cut by the laser cutter, while any lines colored in blue will be engraved. Select everything and go to Stroke Paint and set this to be red. This should be 255-00-100. Next, select only the text and set the stroke paint to be 00255. The text should now be in blue for engraving, while the outlines should be in red for cutting. Now, select everything and under Stroke Style, set the width to 0 millimeters. The lines will now disappear. This is because you've set the width to be 0, but this is not a problem. The laser cutter wants all line widths to be 0. Now, go to File, Save As, and make sure you are saving as a .svg file. You can now close Inkscape. The file is now ready for laser cutting.